Gasps filled the Los Angeles courtroom as shocking accusation stuns Christian Combs. The Los Angeles courtroom fell into stunned silence when the defense attorney dropped a bombshell. Christian Combs was allegedly linked to underage attendees at the now notorious FreakOFFS. In an instant, the entire atmosphere changed. Thick with tension and disbelief, reporters scrambled, camera shutters fired like machine guns. Christian pushed back his chair, his face pale and expression unreadable. Without a word, without even glancing at anyone, not his legal team, not the judge, he walked straight out. No statement. No denial. No apology. Just a chilling, silent exit through the courtroom doors. It was a moment tailor-made for headlines, ignited by a single shocking claim that minors had been present at the wild yacht parties previously shrouded in secrecy. Christian's sudden departure wasn't just dramatic, it was strategic. The second that disturbing allegation was uttered, the narrative shifted. What was once tabloid scandal now bordered on something far more serious. The story had just taken a much darker turn.
Yeah, I ain't hear about that raid. I only heard about the LA and Miami raid. But you feel like the feds, they released that video over King Combs' comments.
My man, I've worked in law enforcement for 27 years, and I had the opportunity to see HIDA. It's a place, whereas they have the state, the feds, the NYPD, the Department of Corrections, and the state police. Yo, this place could be half of a basketball court. That's where they just got lines of computers with officers of all different people and officers just on the internet. Whoever's over that case, whoever's working that case, don't you know they saw that and took it to their boss?
It was impossible to do for me.
Me and my dog, me and my son right here, firstborn. His name is Bailey.
And exhausted them.
Look it up.
People just...
Who's your daddy?
Especially the girls.
You know.
Girls. It was embarrassing.
Sit.
Hard just to get him to call somebody. He like, it's too much work. Like, so happy birthday, Christian. Thank you everybody for coming and cheers.
So stuck.
27. 27.
It's Sunday.
It's Sunday.
We don't got no job.
We don't got no job.
And we don't got nothing to do.
And we don't got nothing to do. Cause we have to do that together.
Audio evidence emerges as allegations against Combs intensify to back the shocking claims. The attorney presented transcripts from audio recordings, reportedly captured by a producer in a makeshift studio hidden aboard the yacht. In one disturbing clip, a young woman named Grace O'Marquez can be heard resisting unwanted advances, encounters she later said escalated into violence after she unknowingly consumed tequila shots she believes were spiked. Grace had been hired as a steward for a yacht trip chartered by Diddy Combs in late December 2022. Expecting a calm, family-friendly retreat where she'd simply serve food and drinks, she instead walked into a nightmare. What she found was chaos, booming music that never stopped, a constant flow of suspected escorts, and drinks so potent that guests were collapsing after just one sip. The yacht, she said, felt less like a luxury escape and more like a trap.
Now a son of embattled music mogul Diddy Combs has been accused of sexual assault. A lawsuit filed in LA Superior Court on Thursday accuses Christian King Combs of sexually assaulting and possibly drugging a woman in December 2022. The woman says it happened while she was working on a yacht that Diddy had chartered. This comes just over a week after homes owned by Diddy were raided in LA and Miami as part of a federal human trafficking investigation. Neither the attorneys for Combs or Diddy have commented on the new legal complaint.
In a new lawsuit, Diddy Combs' second son, Christian Combs, is accused of sexually assaulting a crew member working on a super yacht. That suit was filed here in Los Angeles. Attorneys representing former yacht stewardess Grace O'Marquez say she was sexually assaulted on board a yacht when she was 25 years old in December of 2022 by Diddy's son, rapper Christian Combs. They say his dad, Sean Combs, leased the yacht and had full control of its staff and the premises. O'Marquez's lawyers say Combs turned what was sold as a wholesome family excursion into a hedonistic environment. They stated, quote, "Defendant Sean Combs fostered and encouraged an environment of debauchery. There was always a party atmosphere filled with suspected sex workers, suspected laced alcohol, violence, and sheer disrespect of women and the yacht's crew." The lawsuit also contains photos of bruises that O'Markey's lawyers say she suffered when Christian Combs violently grabbed her and attempted to force her to perform a sex act. They also included a transcript of an audio recording which they say captures O'Markey being forced to consume suspected laced shots of tequila.
The carefree clip comes just days after a yacht steward filed a lawsuit against Christian, alleging he sexually assaulted her in December 2022.
The victim in the case has produced audio recordings that allegedly shows forcing himself upon her and that he wouldn't take no for an answer.
The woman says it all happened during what was supposed to be a wholesome family excursion with Christian and his father.
Check this out, y'all. This is Diddy. This is my son, King Combs. I've been watching my pops since I was a kid. And I'm proud of you, boy.
She says Diddy was the one chartering the yacht for the trip.
This lawsuit is bad for Diddy. He may be able to get out of it, but the optics are terrible when he's already facing a criminal investigation. This may be the nail in the coffin.
Grace's claims against Christian Combs. Grace says that when Christian Combs got on the yacht, he was already very drunk. She claims he pressured her to take tequila shots, then groped her legs, chest, and tried to force her to perform oral sex. She says she fought him off and ran away, but later, he found her in a sleeping area made from a movie theater, blocked the door, and assaulted her again. Someone eventually stepped in and stopped it in her complaint. Grace described how the experience left her with serious emotional and physical effects, panic attacks, suicidal thoughts, an eating disorder, and even seizures. She gave the court photos of bruises on her arm and audio recordings as evidence. She is now suing Christian Combs and Sean Diddy Combs for sexual assault, harassment, emotional distress, and for allowing a dangerous environment on the yacht.
But focusing on Christian Combs, O'Markey says that Christian Combs had been staying at a villa on the shore, but that he would come onto the yacht in the evening to party. And on December 28, 2022, Christian reportedly arrived very intoxicated and then proceeded to pressure O'Markey to take shots of tequila. She did. Christian allegedly tried to get her to drink more in the yacht's makeshift studio. O'Markey alleges that Christian kissed her neck, kissed her face, as he groped her legs, breasts, and private areas. O'Markey reportedly told Christian, quote, "Excuse me, you don't touch my legs like that. I'll move my legs where I want to. If I want to do this, then I will. You don't touch my legs like that." O'Markey then says that she told Christian she couldn't stay with him unless it was approved by a supervisor, all of whom she knew would be asleep at the time, so this was a way for her to get out of the situation. She claims that Christian said, "Who can I talk to? I'm going to say I requested you right now." O'Markey then says she responded with, quote, "Well, you can take your hand off my ass for the first thing."
O'Markey says this is what happened next. She says she tried to go back to work, but Christian ends up finding her and wants her to find him a place to sleep for the night in the yacht. So she takes him to the cinema room of the yacht, and that is when she claims Christian stopped her from leaving, groped her, took off all of his clothes, and tried to force her to perform oral sex on him. Now, she says she was allegedly able to fight him off. Someone walks into the room, and then she was able to leave. And she said when she reported this to the captain, according to her, the captain berates her. And she alleges that the captain may have even been paid off by Sean Combs to keep quiet about what happened. And I will tell you what's really interesting about this complaint. All right, so I want to bring on right now criminal defense attorney Mauricio Padilla, friend of the show. He's represented some very high-profile defendants in high-profile cases. Good to see you once again. So I don't think we've had a chance to talk about this lawsuit. And now that the news is reporting that Christian has been served with papers here, why is that significant?
Well, it's significant because anytime that they have the opportunity to continue to remind the public of the malfeasance of Diddy, of Diddy's son, of anything related to sexually inappropriate behavior, sexual assault, it helps. It helps the government continue to, lay out the narrative of how bad Diddy was, how bad Diddy's son was. So I think it's consistent with, what they've been doing, putting it out there and really destroying his character. I'm not saying that he didn't do anything to deserve it. I'm saying it's consistent with what they're doing, whether it's the government or the lawyers that are suing him civil.
Tensions rise in court as attorneys clash over abuse claims in court. Grace's attorney, Tyrone Blackburn, didn't hold back. He described disturbing details, saying drinks on the yacht were spiked with GHB and other date rape drugs. He pointed to audio recordings as proof and said even more recordings would be submitted soon. Then came the biggest shock. Blackburn claimed that Christian Combs and even some of his siblings had taken part in these so-called FreakOFFS, some of which allegedly involved minors. Sean Diddy Combs' lawyer, Aaron Dyer, quickly responded, calling the lawsuit lewd and false. He said Grace made up the story and promised to get the case dismissed, but Blackburn stood his ground, saying the events really happened and that they had strong evidence to prove it.
To Miss Omarkey, Jones taped this event with her. Yes, the lawsuit provides transcripts of audio recordings, and these audio recordings purportedly show, or you can hear, kissing sounds, her telling Combs not to touch her, her allegedly asking about whether she was drugged. Now, we haven't heard these tapes here on Law and Crime yet, but if they are what they purport to be, that is a huge piece of evidence. And remember, when we're talking a civil case, when we're talking lawsuits, the burden of proof is much lower than a criminal case. It's just preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not that this happened. So the civil suit accuses Christian of assault, battery, sexual assault, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. They're a big part of this lawsuit. She goes into the mental anguish that she has gone through, the emotional harm that she has suffered as a result of that. That's important in order to prove.
In his lengthy lawsuit, Lil Rod straight name drops Justin Combs, describing him as someone who solicits prostitutes, underage girls, and sex workers. There's actually a picture of Justin Combs with an allegedly underage girl shown in the lawsuit. Now, in this specific instance, Lil Rod alleges at least one underage girl came to Diddy's home for a listening party. A sex worker was also apparently solicited, and a freak-off ensued. As an aside, this is the same night that Lil Rod alleges Diddy forced him to take a laced shot. He started to feel lightheaded and then woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, naked next to a sex worker. It's important to note Justin Combs is listed as a defendant on this case because, according to Lil Rod, he facilitated Diddy's alleged RICO enterprise and at times participated.
I think that if we're talking about additional charges and additional defendants, those are probably two of the more likely. And Christian, of course, was the subject of a civil lawsuit where there was a sexual assault allegation naming him directly. So I think if we're going to cast a bit of a wider net, people are talking about family members, other celebrities, maybe some employees like Christian Forum, but I think the most likely would be those two sons.
Why do you think it's the most likely about those two? Just because of the recordings, the allegations against him? What are you thinking?
I think so. I think obviously they're just civil allegations and those cases are going to be put on hold while the criminal case plays out. But, there is some smoke there. And obviously, there's a presumption of innocence and there's a lower standard in a civil case. But you have someone who's been named directly as someone who participated in a sexual assault. And everything else has been rumors and speculation. But here you at least have one verified complaint.
Prosecutors. FreakOFFS were planned, abusive events involving Diddy and his children. Prosecutors say the so-called FreakOFFS weren't just wild parties. They were carefully planned, sexually explicit events, allegedly organized by Sean Diddy Combs himself. According to the Manhattan indictment, some guests, including minors, were reportedly forced into drug-fueled acts that were secretly recorded. The lawsuit also directly accuses Diddy's children. Claims they weren't just watching, they helped plan and carry out the events. They're accused of recruiting underage girls, handing out cash, setting up the locations, and even helping film what happened, all alongside their father.
I believe it was Justin, Diddy, and G walked into the bathroom. Gunshots rang out. Little Rod woke up so scared. Justin and Diddy left. Little Rod went in the bathroom, saw G out all over the place, literally called the ambulance, carried him out. It was carnage and everything, put him in the ambulance. The police showed up Little Rod cited that in his lawsuit, and then they asked for the LAPD's report. The LAPD just released an 18-page report with no mention of any carnage or anyone that actually got shot.
There's also allegations that he actually partook in these freak-offs and potentially drugged women. This is something Lil Rod is saying. How would the feds go about proving something like that? I know that's the pattern we've seen across a lot of these civil suits, that women allege Diddy, for instance, drugged them. But now Lil Rod's also pointing the finger at Justin Combs, saying he drugged some of these women. How would the feds then go to look further into that?
Yeah, Lil Rod's lawsuit is interesting in that there are many defendants. We talked about Christina Horam, right? Some of the allegations that came out in Lil Rod's lawsuit was Christina, of course, being Combs' right-hand woman, she allegedly had the fanny pack with the drugs that were provided to the sex workers, or that there are the allegations directly against Justin as well. So whenever you're proving something like this, obviously, you're going to rely on the testimony of witnesses. You know, it could be an independent witness, because sex workers, even though they're participants in a sex act, they won't necessarily be charged, or I don't think they're going to be defendants in the lawsuit, if the allegation is that they were forced to perform these sex acts and it wasn't just a commercial trend.
Christian's case deepens as Diddy faces shocking indictment. The charges against Sean Diddy Combs have cast an even darker shadow over his son Christian's case. On September 16, 2024, a Manhattan grand jury indicted Diddy on multiple serious charges, including racketeering, human trafficking, and more. Prosecutors claim Diddy ran a system of manipulation where women, some allegedly as young as 9, were lured into freak-offs involving paid male sex workers. Drugs were reportedly used to control the victims, and the entire encounters were filmed from beginning to end. The indictment also includes charges of arson, bribery, and kidnapping. But at the center of it all are the deeply disturbing sexual acts said to have taken place at these planned events.
I was at I believe to be one of P. Diddy's freak-offs.
Now, singer-songwriter Tania Wallace told TMZ's Harvey Levin for the Tubi special, The Downfall of Diddy, Inside the Freak-Offs, she believes she witnessed underage victims at one of Diddy's 2018 parties.
I'm looking like, are those midgets? Because people were it's people over them, like it's people trying to hide what they're doing.
Adults who are little people, or are you talking about minors?
Am I gonna get in trouble? I don't want to say I witnessed any of that crazy stuff, but we all have common sense. Little people that's not supposed to be there.
You're talking about underage people.
It's a shame.
Is this woman, Tania, is she really saying that there were minors involved in these freak-offs?
That is exactly what she's saying, Billy.
Yeah, the fact, Jake, that the government in this indictment presented evidence alleging that Sean Combs was running a criminal enterprise, and they actually named it in the indictment, the Combs Enterprise. And they said that this enterprise consisted of him as the alleged leader, his employees, assistants, staff, allegedly, that were able to procure women and alleged male sex workers to engage in performances for his own sexual gratification. Where it differs from a mob indictment, it has all the elements of putting together this racketeering allegation of all these moving pieces using resources from his businesses. But the fact that this is about an allegation of sexual gratification being accomplished by alleged human trafficking, it's one of the most unique indictments I've ever seen in this area, in the area of sex crimes.
First of all, he is not steering away from the idea of the freak-offs. They seem to be saying, these were called freak-offs, we're going to call them freak-offs, but they're not illegal.
Yeah.
But one of the charges he faces is transportation to engage in prostitution. If he's saying, yeah, I hired sex workers, but if he's transporting them and paying for them, I feel like it's going to be very, very difficult to argue he's not guilty of that charge. We talked last time about how he tried to get it dismissed from the case, basically saying it's a racist charge, but it's going in.
Yeah, so Diddy just walked into the courtroom like he normally does. He hugged all of his attorneys. He, dabbed up Mark Agnifilo. I think he was kind of searching in the gallery to see if he had family there, because when court had first started, nobody was there from his family. And I think he kind of looks forward, and I'm just speculating here, obviously I'm not in his mind, but I think he looks for people, especially his mom, to be inside that courtroom in the gallery. But today it was just Justin Combs all by himself. I think in the moment when he had first walked into the courtroom, it was a little bit after it had started, he kind of was like clearing his throat. I don't know if it was because he actually had to clear his throat or if it was to get his father's attention, just to let him know that he is here.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but Diddy did turn around a couple of times. I don't know if it was to see if more of his family came in or just to kind of like check in with Justin during that, but he seems to always kind of be more excited to see his family inside that